Knife Fight is about sort of the political world, and in the political world, politicians often have advisors that tell them, kind of advise them how to do things, what they do. And I originally wanted to make the film as a documentary, and I thought it'd be great to feature someone running for president, be their advisors. And I actually met a couple of people who were running for president, and I realized that you could never get the camera into the room that you needed to get the camera in. And I think that I can't speak for other countries, but I can speak for the U.S., that there, in no political documentary that I'm aware of, has anyone truly been in the room behind the room. So I wanted to get in the room behind the room, and then I formed an alliance with a person named Chris Lehane, who was an advisor to Bill Clinton for 8 years, was Al Gore's spokesperson, and has advised many international presidential candidates. And so it's a fictional film, but it's based on real stories of real people, and it takes you behind the scenes into the room behind the room.
Does one have to be delicate when making a movie like this? I mean, do you do it really according to what you find is the truth, or do you have to make a balance?
Well, I think you try to make it as truthful as you can. I mean, there's a line in the film that to win in politics, that you have to be the person willing to bring a gun to a knife fight. I mean, it's these are really bare knuckle brawls. I mean, it's not pretty. And the thing about politics is when the person is, you knock a person down, you have to really be prepared to stick the knife in. And if you don't stick the knife in, a lot of times you'll pay the price. I mean, these aren't pretty contests when it comes right down to it. On the other hand, it really does matter. I mean, it matters who we elect. Do you want to spend more money on elementary school teachers? Do you want to spend more money on building, bombers? And so I think the stakes are very high, and we try to capture that kind of real stakes events that happen in American politics.
How do you define power?
Well, I think power is something that everyone wants, but people often don't understand. And it's once you get sucked into it, it's hard to let it go. I mean, I was just reading, there's a line from the U.S. President Lyndon Johnson that said the things that make basically leaders stupid are envy and sex.
And sex, wow.
And so, anyway, so the strongest leaders can be brought down by both of these things.
So true.
But I think power fascinates all of us, and how to use it and how it's abused is something that's very much part of our lives, and we want to be part of that dialogue.
You're quite involved in bringing up issues about if it's politics or war, for example. Has this always been a passion of yours, or has this been the reason why you wanted to make movies?
I've always been interested in issues that affect people's lives, and so I think that you had these moments where things are really important. I've done films on the Civil Rights Movement, which was very important, or the rape in Nanking, which was a significant world history thing. And I think here, I believe that politicians really affect our lives. And I think there's this line from the great U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, who said, "Sunshine is the best disinfectant." So if you throw sunshine on something, you can it has a disinfectant type quality. And in some ways, the film is a very affirmational film in some ways. I mean, it shows the dark side, it shows the cynicism, but it also shows people who are kind of idealistic. And if you think about it, at least in the U.S., we have a history in the U.S. of people who come from outside the political system who can, rise up. I mean, whatever you feel about, we used to call the Gubernator, the former governor of California, he wasn't a politician. I mean, and Ronald Reagan, whatever you feel about Ronald Reagan, was not a politician. So the U.S. does have a system where people can come in from the outside and achieve, great prominence and power. And what they do with it is another question.
Apart from feature films, you do documentaries, and you've also directed a lot of TV series for major networks. Is it a different process of working, and do you prefer one opposed to the other?
I'm fascinated either stories that are true or stories that are grounded in truth. At one point during, for example, while we're filming, a senator from California came by the set while we're filming, and it was just sort of amazing to me that you have sort of the fake politicians standing next to the real politicians.
Who's who?
And they're trading stories, and and that really interests me. And I think one of the things I like about documentaries are, the people are real. Like, I did a TV series that was set in a courtroom, and we filmed these trials, and, someone would be accused of a really terrible crime. It would be like, murder or rape or kidnapping, and there were real victims and a lot of emotion. And, the drama is really intense because the person who's accused of the kidnapping, the rape, or the murder, that person's either going to walk out the front of the courtroom a free person or go out the back, sentenced to decades in jail. And the drama is palpable, especially if you care about the victims, which people generally do. And I found that very powerful. And then when you make a film, you're trying to achieve that same level of veracity, that you try to pull people into an environment where everything feels real. And well, what feels real? Like sometimes you want the hair and makeup to feel real. You want the words they say to feel real. You want the setting to feel real. And my hope is if you put together the story that feels real and a look that feels real, and that people start feeling like it is real and they forget that they're in their movie, and they identify with the characters. So that's the hope. Whether it's achieved, to come and see it.
Have you become more cynical or more positive when it comes to the world of politics?
God, that's such a great question. I think I've become more realistic. I mean, the thing about what happens in politics, again, I can't speak to what happens in Sweden, I can't speak about the US, is that everything is processed. Like when a politician gives a speech, everything they're saying, they're thinking it out in advance. I mean, most people do. You think about what you're saying 30 seconds from now, 2 minutes from now, or 5 minutes from now. But what a politician does is they process every word so it never ever is spontaneous, because they can't afford to take a chance on saying something spontaneous. But you make it feel like it's spontaneous. You make it feel like it's the first time you hear the question. And I think that you're trying to show what they do when they're not being processed. Like I always loved the French movie Day for Night. And what I liked about that movie was it was all about actors. So when, they weren't acting in front of the camera and you went back to their bedrooms or the restaurant or wherever, you feel like, oh, that's them talking for real. And, in some ways, I hope, without making too pretentious comparison, I think that we're trying to do a similar thing here. That you see a politician in front, they're making a speech. But then when you see them when it's late at night, then you're saying, oh, that must be real.
Do you have any advice for directors and screenwriters, up-and-coming, aspirational ones?
Well, I don't think there's ever been a better time to make films, honestly. I mean, I think this will be looked at as some sort of golden age. And simply because when I was coming up and making films, editing was expensive and cameras were expensive and everything, and distribution was unattainable. And everything was sort of in the hands of sort of the wealthy or the powerful, speaking of power. And I think what's happening now is that cameras are cheap, editing is cheap, you can find actors for your project. So there's a democratization that's going on like never before. So what I would say a couple of things. One is that, I think, the secret to writing is kind of writing. There's a line from Oliver Stone, which is, writing is, ass plus chair. And I think that, if you're going to write, just go out and write. If you're going to make a film, just go out and make a film. But you have the ability to get it out there. And without sounding too Pollyannish, I do believe that there's this idea that, with quality, you can find an audience. So I think this is a tremendous time to be out there making films.
That's a good way to sum it all up. And last but not least, do you have a favorite movie quote?
Well, one of my favorite movies is Billy Wilder's The Apartment, and I love the way it ends, where they say, "Shut up and deal."